Yo, hey, welcome everybody. So Coach BK here and Coach Coral. Hey. So we are going to really zip through a lot of information today and on the topic of training in the heat and not melt your brain or otherwise be unhealthy for it. Okay, so we're going to go through really fast. We are going to provide show notes and chitter chatter and links and studies and show notes at bonniekissinger.com/heat, okay? Because there's a lot of information, and we're also doing a podcast with an anesthesiologist talking about electrolytes 101 that's going to go hand in hand with this stuff, and it's the stuff that you need to know, yo. Okay, so Coral, wherever she's at on your screen, tell me about your most awesome hot race experience.
Hot as in melting. Oh man. So up until about 4 or 5 years ago, I did all of my racing in Florida in the summertime. And one race in particular, Florida 70.3 in, I think it was in May at the time, 2009. It was a scorcher and I basically wilted on the run. It was about 92 degrees, full sun. This was long before I'd even heard of base salts or electrolyte balance or anything like that. It was basically a walking graveyard. It was super rough, and just a death march. I mean,
Right.
Not to be dramatic, but I mean, that heat it absolutely baked people to the ground, and there was no ice. So
Yes.
rough race.
Yes. Yeah, and you see this like Chattanooga, last year the DNF rate was just sky high.
It was almost half, wasn't it?
I'm thinking it was like, I don't know if it was half, but it was sky high due to heat. And, we just need to understand and kind of try to take your management of the heat out of the equation, because anything that you can do to kind of counteract what Mother Nature throws at you makes you a smarter athlete. I don't deal well with the heat. I'm one of these person types that really don't deal well with the heat. And so Kansas 70.3, when Ironman had that, it's beginning of the summer. You don't have a lot of time to acclimate. Dude, and I wasn't doing stuff right, and I wasn't very smart, and I had taken ibuprofen before, and I had this new kit, and we joked about it being a sausage suit. So this race literally tried to bake my face off. It was so hot. If anybody's done Kansas 70.3, you know that there's this hill that you have to climb, run, walk, crawl up twice, and it sucks. And so my coach had strategically placed himself there. I was so mad and upset and rah. And he's like, "Oh, you look good in your sausage suit." And there was, yeah, right. I ended up, oh my gosh, it was a terrible race. I ended up having pretty decent kidney issues that drove me to the doctor the next time. And he goes, "Okay, endurance athlete, you need to be a little bit smarter. Never, ever, ever, ever do you get to take ibuprofen, and this kind of hurts your kidneys long term. And you're now in acute renal deficiency at the time." So it literally, my kidneys almost shriveled up and died. It was terrible. So,
what do we do about it?
No doubt, right? So this is kind of what has spurred us on. This is going to be a free resource to the tri community, backed by science, studies and stuff like that. You just need to be smart about this stuff, folks, because it's real in your face. Okay, here we go. Word. Are you going to ask me questions, or you want me to just rattle on, yo?
So, I'll ask you some questions. How about that?
Yeah.
Cool. So, I mean, what are electrolytes, and why are we having this conversation about electrolytes and heat training to begin with?
Right. And electrolytes are super, super duper important. Again, the podcast that we're going to do this weekend, you'll want to see that. Electrolytes for Athletes 101. Electrolytes are elements. The periodic table, there's four main ones: calcium, sodium, magnesium, and I forgot one.
It's the K. Potassium.
Potassium, magnesium, sodium. What they do, and so you have water, you're all water mostly, right? And you have a lot of, you're not like free water, you're not distilled water, you're water that has electrolytes in it. Think about the fact that your tears are salty. When you get an IV, it's not straight water, it has electrolytes in it. If you ever try to neti pot with straight water, that goes bad. Your body is not, maybe let's just think about it, make things simple. If Smarties are on the line, just we're simplifying it, okay? 1%. So you are a solution of not just straight water, electrolytes. And what they do is, so you have water outside of the cell and you have water inside of the cell. And in order for things to go back and forth, these electrolytes work in combination with each other, and we're simplifying it to 4 of them, but there's more. What they do is they push buttons and they help things go in and out. Talking about osmolarity, the Smarty on the Electrolyte 101 podcast is going to talk about this sodium potassium pump. Okay, it's your body's way of getting stuff in and out of the cell correctly. It's fascinating. Okay, so when we say we don't need salt or we don't need this, we literally have zero idea what we're talking about. The layman has no clue. Okay, so it's important stuff, and it's just fascinating. We're going to really cover some of this stuff in depth with the Electrolyte 101. It's cool, geeky stuff. But so in essence, the electrolytes are just governing opening and closing of water in and out, and then so nutrients are going in and out, the blood stays correct and whatnot. So that's electrolytes. Okay.
So basically, electrolytes, if you don't have them, nothing's working the way it should. Bottom line.
Yeah, and it gets a little more serious than that. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So yes. Yep. The anesthesia world will tell you that if certain things get off, there's a high price to be paid. Okay. So water, electrolytes, podcast.
Water, electrolytes. Here's another question though for you. You mentioned there's a large body of research or opinion where people say your standard American diet, people are consuming too much salt, which is of course only one of the electrolytes we're talking about. But how does that need to be debunked? How does that mentality correspond to what we're talking about today?
This is a really super duper good question. And, I have letters behind my name, and other people have letters behind their name. Dietitians have letters behind their name, but there's opinions all across the board, right? So as a society, really, we need to come together more on this and be a little more, exact, really, because the recommendations came from, low salt, low fat was an attempt for us to be healthier. So, okay, yay or nay, whatever. Moving forward, most of us are eating clean. We're not eating out of a box. So the sodium and the preservatives that were in boxed foods that we're trying to get away from, that is causing all of this stuff, the health crisis, holy smokes. This, that doesn't exactly pertain to the eating well triathlete. Now, if you're eating out of a box, you need to have a come to Jesus with yourself. But so we're getting smarter. And an article out of this magazine, and you're going to see it more and more, they're doing studies. And so this article was saying the exact saying that we're saying, that our recommendations on low salt and stuff like that might not actually be healthy anymore. And this study actually showed that people that don't get enough salt are actually at risk, increased risk for stroke, heart attack, cardiovascular disease, etc. Even if they have high blood pressure or not, because usually the concern is, what is salt going to do to my blood pressure. Okay, we need to acknowledge, and this article does too, and the Electrolyte 101 podcast is going to get the smarty to talk about this as well. There is a percentage of people, about 20 to 25%, that are sensitive to salt. And if you understand what sodium does for the blood pressure, for water, for all of this stuff, you kind of like can piece it together on why it's a deal and why it's not a deal. Okay, because it's responsible for all of these things. It's not, we tend to think of sodium as salt, and then we think about it just in terms of sweating, but it does so much more than that. Like getting sugar, glycogen into a cell for the mitochondria to burn it requires sodium to open the cell and for things to go back and forth. We need to kind of broaden our understanding of electrolytes, not just salt, I'm sweating it, I can lick it off my face. That's just such a very top version of it. But this article is actually saying that not enough, that the recommendations are low, is what they said, and that not getting enough is actually damaging to cardiovascular. So you're going to see more and more of that as we get a little bit smarter on nutrition, which is yay, because some electrolyte and salt supplements, salt supplements or electrolyte supplements, if you were to go on some of the guidelines, and we'll go over this here in a second, they're insufficient. They're just not enough. And so you have athletes that are trying to do what, the best that they can, but they go pick up X electrolyte supplement, and I'll look at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like a fourth of what I need based on what the bottle says. So we just need to be smart, just like in everything else. Read the label, know the math. Okay, you got me on a soapbox.
But it's important. So that's a really good foundational understanding about how electrolytes manage things in the body, obviously super basic level.
Yes.
So my next question is, I guess the other half of the conversation we're going to be having about the balance of these two things, how does the body just on a basic level kind of regulate its temperature, regulate itself when exercising or racing in the heat? Okay. Why is that a concern?
Yes, absolutely. So the body temperature is very important, right? You can't get too cold. You can't get too hot. Your organs are going to shut down, or they're going to fry and die, right? My terminology, I'm not an MD. I'm a mechanical engineer, okay? You get the point. So it's all about protecting the brain and very important organs, right? Because you can survive without a leg for a while, or hands. That's why we get frostbite, right? But you can't survive without the brain, the heart, and some other organs. So what the body does is it has 4 ways of trying to keep itself cool, which is freaking awesome. We're smart. We just need to understand this. One is perspiration and evaporation, right? Off the skin. It's mechanical engineering. You pull heat out. The thing that the athlete needs to know in this particular version or way of cooling ourselves off is blood flow. Blood flow goes away from the organs in the middle, like your stomach, so your digestion goes down, and it goes to the surface or the outer parts of your body. And when you get hot, your heart rate goes up, so you get more blood flowing. And what it's doing is trying to cool itself off. So you sweat, you're pulling out heat, it evaporates. This idea, right? It's a water cycle, basically. But what you need to know is that the blood flow changes. You just don't get the same amount of blood flow to your belly. It's often your face. That's why your face gets red. Some of us get really red faces and stuff like that. I know, right? I see people and I'm like, are you okay? Do you need to cool down? Because I feel like they're going to have like an MI at any point, right? Another one, number 2, radiation. Radiation is movement of atoms and stuff. It's not like the apocalypse. I'm going to turn into a zombie. That's not what we're talking about. It's body next to another without contact. And it's the primary way that your body cools itself off when at rest, right? So if you're sleeping in your bed with your person and they're like, you're like, OMG, you're so freaking hot. That person's radiating heat. They're keeping themselves cool. And so I would say put like ice packs over there on that side if they're just making you sweat, right? Anyway, that's a different topic. Number 3 is conduction. So one body next to the other. If you are leaning, you're hot and you're leaning up to a refrigerator or something like that, and you're like, oh, thank gosh. That's conduction. And then convection, air over skin. So sweating, respiration, evaporation is different. You get 2 things going on your bike, right? If you have clothes off, a lot of skin contact off, and you didn't lather. This is the problem with sunscreen, is sometimes it stops sweating, or it clogs up your pores, and then this kind of goes awry a little bit. So if you ever like spray a bunch of sunscreen on and you just feel like, that's because you've kind of short-circuited these 2 things. Convection is the movement of water molecules, be it air or water or ice, over a surface. So that's how we keep ourselves cool. Boop, boop. Oh,
Gotcha.
One side note, okay? Because we're going to be kind of specific here on limitations. Sometimes you just need to know the limitations, okay? Be less type A, less stubborn, more smart, and understand that sometimes it's too hot or it's too humid. When it's humid and there's so much water in the air itself, your ability to cool yourself is going to tank, and it is what it is. And you need to decide, if my A race is not a hot race, put the fact that you hate the treadmill in your back pocket and listen to your coach and just go run on the treadmill so you don't bake your brain. Okay.
So, next question. Is there kind of like a baseline recommendation for the amount of electrolytes that you need to intake to kind of facilitate these and help these different heat alleviating things that you just talked about?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah? Okay. How do we figure that out?
I know, right? And this is where one size fits all does not apply. And this is where everybody gets kind of like Facebook thread arguments over this. I started a doozy one time and I'm like, awesome. Okay. If you do the math and you talk to a wizard like an anesthesiologist who does this stuff for a living and completely understands how to keep you alive, how to paralyze you and you not remember, how to da-da-da-da-da-da, they will tell you, okay, baseline 1%. And so if you think about water, making it 1%, do all the math, the general guidelines is 1,000 milligrams of salt an hour. And I will say again, this is just a starting point. The point is that it is drastically higher than what most electrolyte supplements are giving you. That's the point. If you want to argue, send me an email, okay? It's just a recommendation. To be smarter, and this is not rocket science, you don't have to have 1 million letters behind your name to do a sweat test. You can do it yourself. You can Google it. It's easy. Your coach can do it. It's easy. And you can get a better idea of how much you sweat, how much sodium you need to input. And let's just say, to be smart, it's not just salt we need to be inputting. It's all the electrolytes. You do the sweat test, you get a better idea. But the point of this conversation is that generally we are all not getting enough. And then if you're a heavy sweater, if you sweat a lot, if you're that person that's running on the track or the treadmill and you're flinging sweat everywhere and you have restless legs at night, or you have cardiac drift, or you feel like crap, or you're getting nauseous after your training, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you need to have a real good conversation with yourself or somebody on, do I need more? Because people need more sometimes. Okay.
Good stuff. So that's the electrolyte side of it specifically, and we'll talk a bit more about that, right?
Yes,
But is there another way, not another way, but kind of a way to acclimatize to the heat? I know I've heard a lot about this, but what are your thoughts on getting used to training in the heat as a way to get your body to adapt and adjust?
Heat acclimation takes 7 to 10 days, and I think that for some of us, we need to extend that. So what it is, and this is where we need to kind of be a little softer and give ourselves as athletes more grace. So if we signed up for hot races, you know, Eagleman, it's in June, right? In the 70.3. Sometimes it catches us because it might be cool, it might be hot, and you didn't have 3 weeks or so to get used to the heat. So that's why some of that Kansas 70.3, where we get to the race and it's a lot harder than what it should be heat-wise, because we didn't have that grace period, because it just all of a sudden got hot. That's what it does in Kansas. It's like nice, and then it's not nice. So it can take, 2 to 3 weeks, right? And it's a set of physical and body changes. Your sweat rate changes. So check it out. We were talking about sodium recommendations, okay? Or let's talk about electrolyte recommendations. And then if your sweat rate kind of changes, which science says it does, this is where we need to, yes, you need more, but we need to just be a little bit smarter and learn how to listen to the body. The way I train people, water separate, fuel separate, electrolyte separate in principle. So then if you understand that, you get consistency with how much water you need to put in. Then you get smarts on, oh, I need to start training with a little bit more water. Oh, I need to start training with a little bit more salt. And then so you develop this intuitive kind of relationship with your body in this, if you start to listen and do it consistently. So things to do for heat acclimation. This is coming from, and there's a link in the show notes, bonniekitchener.com/heat, for the athletes, the football players, because a couple of years ago, everybody's freaking out about the football players passing out, that the young athletes, right? Huge deal. Well, we're doing it too. It's just, it's not in the media because we're adults. So do not participate in the beginning, like that first week in 2-a-days when it's hot. Just do it once. And maybe I would suggest maybe going out when it's halfway hot, not full blazing. It's going to scorch your face off hot. Don't do it more than 3 hours at a time. And I would suggest maybe first week, 1 hour. It depends on, if you're a person that tans well, have at it, right? If you are a person that is pale and doesn't tan and only burns, I would suggest maybe considering not doing hot races, because it probably will never be healthy for you to train in hot all the time. Just throwing that out there. Make sure that you're hydrated, not with all free water. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Don't do high intensity. Don't go out there and do a fart. What's it called?
A fartlick?
Not teak. Fartlick. Sorry, folks. Inside joke. Don't go blazing the first time. If you have intervals to do and that's the first time you've gone out into the heat, be smart. Don't be so type A and I have to do this because my coach says so, and you get home and you're like dead or you want to puke. That's not healthy for the body long term at all. Avoid practicing or heat training when you're sick or kind of sick. Don't do that. Cooling methods, have cooling methods. Ice on the skin is awesome. My dog overheats, and I just put an ice pack out of the refrigerator. So that stuff that, you put on your shoulders, and they have Ace Wraps at Walgreens, that's perfect for putting on the back of your neck, on your belly, in your groin, your femoral arteries. Perfect place to cool yourself off.
There's actually just a quick note about that, Bonnie.
Yeah.
There's really easy tutorials online about how you can turn a bandana into like a little ice kerchief, if you will.
Yeah.
So you just have like a little pocket, just stuff some ice in there. It's gold.
They have those frog thingies. It looks like chamois that you wash your car with, right? That hold in water. Frog is not it, but anyway, yes, all of that. Take frequent breaks when you're training. If your body's saying stop. Okay. Plenty of sleep the night before, and don't forget to hydrate with water and electrolytes afterwards, like hours afterwards, or just learn how to be an athlete that hydrates yourself all the time. Your coach shouldn't be telling you, hey, make sure you hydrate. Okay, that should be a given. Cross that off the list of stuff your coach needs to tell you how to do. Okay, moving on.
Cool. Should we move into a couple other thoughts about what to do when it's hot?
Yeah, okay.
Does that sound good?
Yeah, let's run through this. Some of this we might have already talked about, but okay, specific. Hydrate, but don't hydrate with just free water. Again, the Electrolyte Podcast 101 is going to completely convince you of why this is silly. So some people will say, get a gallon of water and drink that whole gallon of water in one day, right? And this podcast is by the smarty, the person with the appropriate letters behind their name, is going to tell you that why that can actually hurt you, because just drinking a bunch of free water or a bunch of coffee or a bunch of tea can create electrolyte imbalances because you actually just flush the stuff out. Okay, so if you drink a lot of water, you need to drink water that's 1%, and you need to add in electrolytes. So with all of the folks that I coach, I rag on them pretty heavy about taking a magnesium supplement. Magnesium is so critical. There will be lots of information in the show notes on this one. It's one that most of the smarties are in agreement that we are all mag deficient. The ground is mag deficient. Our food is mag deficient. You cannot eat enough green leafies in order to get ahead, and especially if you sweat a lot, whatnot. The Electrolyte Podcast will talk more about magnesium, but magnesium's why we're cramping generally, not salt. We just don't quite understand. Magnesium turns on relaxing. Sodium turns on contraction. You just need to kind of understand that it's not just sodium. A lot more going on, and that you drinking a bunch of free water and you're just washing it out. Drink the right amount of water for you. Not everybody needs to drink the same amount because everybody's different. Everybody comes in different sizes, different shapes. So a good guideline, body weight times 0.3.
And what does that yield? Liters or?
It's milliliters, right?
Milliliters.
Yeah. And really, okay. Ironman University says drink to thirst. However, this is kind of cool and interesting. If you don't have enough sodium on board in your body, you're not going to have a thirst response because your blood's going to be, I think I got that wrong, if you have too much salt. Anyway, one or the other. If the sodium content isn't right in the blood or in the body, it sways which way if you're thirsty or not, even if you need water, because for the volume of blood that is in there, the tank, it's going to keep it at the percentage that it is. So some people might not have a thirst response even though they need to not be dehydrated because their electrolytes are off. They're either too much water, too much salt, not enough, and that can affect drink to thirst. So it's really quite quite interesting how all this stuff goes, and that our general kind of just default answers might not work. Okay. Get going out and racing and training, and it's going to be hot. Don't fill your belly up with a lot of food because blood gets shunted from the belly, from the digestion, to keep yourself cool, and that stuff is just going to sit in there. And at some point in time, your body's going to be like, this has got to go, and it's going to go one way or the other. I believe that liquid nutrition is good, and if you get the right liquid nutrition, that it makes it easier for the belly. So if the belly doesn't have as much ability to digest, meaning that the blood is shunted from the belly, and this is a fact and you can't argue with it, it's science, it happens. If you can create food, fueling for the body that's easier to get at, liquid is easier to get at because you don't have to chew it, you don't have to do all this digestive process. And then if you're smart and you get fuel that the body absorbs easier, like sugar comes in, glucose, fructose, sucrose, each time the sugar molecule gets more complex, the body has to do more to it to get it to glucose, to get it to glycogen, to get it with the water into the cell. Hope that makes sense. I'm not saying that you shouldn't eat stuff. I'm also saying everybody's different. Okay, so like me personally, I use a mix of UCAN, glucose, and base aminos as fuel, and then I add in glucose bars that are stupid clean, or kind bars if I'm in a pinch, because kind bars are everywhere and they have a nice mix of carb, fat, protein. So you can chew some and then drink your stuff, and the belly's like, oh, awesome. And then you can go on how you feel. So dealing with the heat and being a happy runner or happy biker can be all in how you put those two ideas together. Continue hydrating with water and electrolytes after. So if you are driving down the highway from your long brick and you see McDonald's and you think that the fries with the salt are like the best thing ever, right? And you kind of can't keep the car from going through the drive-thru and you mouth through those fries like in 5 seconds, you didn't get in enough salt. But one thing that's just the point of listening to the cravings. Listen to your body cravings. If you do things consistently, you're eating clean and you're following principles, your body will tell you, and then you don't need to go Google what XYZ person is doing. You know the principles. The principles are not rocket science. They're not going to change generally, and you can adapt your solution for you depending on how hot it is, what state you're at. Females, if you're rolling into PMS time, it changes. Okay.
I'm just laughing at the the French fry side note. I was training for Louisville last year. Did not have this awareness for the electrolytes in my head. I loved and friggin' craved potato chips. Just couldn't get enough of them. But
and really the craving for crunch goes along with salt. If you're a person who is a health coach and whatnot, the way we're more holistic, and so we understand if the body is craving certain things, it might not be direct. You kind of have to like think about what it's actually doing, but crunch is still salt, and so that means just day to day you're not getting enough salt. I have an athlete that she has to take potassium all the time because her body she sweats like nobody's business. It's disgusting. I'm like, ew. We'll be biking and she'll go through 3 or 4 different headbands and she'll actually throw them at me. I'm like, don't do that. That's aki, right? But she actually has to take magnesium, eat extra salt, and take potassium. And it's like cray. But anyway.
Good deal. So, Bonnie, I'm going to bring up some slides. I think we've talked a lot about the awareness side of things and kind of the baseline. But I'm going to bring up some slides here so folks kind of get a visual for other recommendations.
Yeah. And a little bit of a repeat, because this is important. This is just stupid important. All right.
Good deal. So when it's hot, what else can we do?
When it's hot, eat right, day to day. Day to day, day to day, day to day, okay? Hopefully you're eating less processed foods. And so when we were talking about heat acclimation, you guys need to understand that the body is going to work better if you're eating right all the time, okay? You could be doing your electrolytes right and your water right and eating like trash and drinking too much. Alcohol consumption actually, FYI, eats up magnesium. Check it out, okay? Eat right. So to help the body just do what it is designed to do. Hydrate with electrolytes. This needs to be crossed off the list as far as you as an athlete. Hydrate yourself right. Hydrate means electrolyte. Think about it in terms of you are giving yourself an IV all the time. The IV is not straight water, yo, okay? Hydrate electrolytes. Day to day, all the time, be a juicy, water-filled human being. If you're going into hot, certainly if you're craving salty food, eat more salty food. Pay attention to things, eat more salt. Be more yoga-like and decide if you need to go out into the hot and do that, or if you need to get used to the treadmill. Tanning. Not tanning in a tan bed. No. Having a tan is very helpful in dealing with the heat. The tanning process is your body's way of protecting itself. So, think about folks in hotter climates like in Africa and stuff, right? The human body is fascinating how it can deal with Mother Nature. So getting a tan is good. And this is where kind of like lathering on all the sunscreen that kind of stops our cooling process. I'm not saying not using sunscreen. I'm saying allow your body to get tan. It can help. Don't get burnt. Burnt is like putting yourself in a microwave and then expecting everything to still go well. That doesn't go well at all. If you don't tan well, or folks that need a look like me in my heart healthy plan, which I want to put an aside to, getting off in electrolytes is stupid unhealthy for heart health. More on that in the Electrolyte 101 for reals. One of the rules that my cardiologist said is you cannot get off in electrolytes, period. He said he'd fire me. So if you don't tan well, or you just need to ratchet things down, less stressful, which is okay. Doing a half Ironman or triathlon is stressful in and of itself. You don't need to beat yourself down as well. Maybe use the protective clothing, the white long shirts and stuff like that. And I don't care what it looks like or who's not doing it or who is doing it. If that is good for you, do it. That'll be less stress on the body. So if your body is a person that needs less stress, do it. If you are getting migraines from exercising or whatnot, don't train in the heat. Okay, your brain is telling you don't train in the heat, and maybe be mindful and not sign up for hot races, which kind of is hard. If your A race isn't hot, don't train in the heat. Listen to your body. Logistics on the long biking. I see this in clubs all the time. They'll just go out, run out of water. So if you're doing long bricks by yourself, say you're training for half Ironman, find loops where you can drop water. And with that water, have a bag. We have a bag that we take that gets put with the jug of water, and it has extra salt, base salts in it. It has sunscreen and other emergency things in there. Set yourself up logistically. You could put more water on your bike. Even a camelback if you're doing long run, or whatnot. If you can't do the logistics right, try not to run out of water, because if you're doing an out and back and you're in the middle of nowhere and you run out of water, that's terrible, not very smart. I try to have, if you're not training with a team or a club and you're going out for a hot ride, try to text somebody and have them be kind of aware of where you're at and expected time frame. So then if you don't text them, this stuff happens, folks, okay? Have your road ID on you, but just be smart, especially if it's like 100. How many rides, Coral, have you done? It's 101 and you get back and you're like, that sucked.
I mean, seriously, you kind of feel like you're drunk when you get home, just super disoriented. And I think the next slide actually has some identifying things to look for to know whether or not you're kind of getting out of whack. So.
Yeah. And last thing, when you get done, food cravings, the body cravings are your tell. And, if you have a coach that you're working with that understands this stuff, craving watermelon is very important to know, craving salt, craving this, craving that. If you're driving past McDonald's, pay attention to what you want. Do you want the fries? Do you want the hamburger with the fat or the protein? All of that really helps you to understand how to do your training and your nutrition and your electrolyte and your water better. Okay. What else we got? Signs. Okay.
What are the signs?
Oh, yeah.
How do you know?
How do you know? I thought this would be good to give you guys some of these tips. I understand it intuitively anymore because I've trained like this for a while. But if you don't pay attention early enough, they kind of run into each other and you kind of don't understand. Or if you start feeling kind of bad and you don't self-medicate or take care of the first hint, then other things go sideways. Example, if you get low in salt, your thirst request, that doesn't sound right, your thirst drive is going to go down. So you're going to get a little dehydrated and you're going to start feeling fatigued. Okay. Well, not having enough fuel on board also leads to fatigue. But if you're fatigued, you're not thinking right, and then maybe you skip some of your fueling. And so you feel triple worse because now you're kind of off on maybe salt, you're off on the water a little bit, and then you don't drink your fuel and you're off on calories, and specifically probably glycogen, because let's face it, half Ironman, we get low in glycogen. That feels terrible too, and the brain's actually starving. And there's another way of making bad decisions. And I wonder, you see more bike accidents. My mind kind of asks the question, are we not being super mindful on the bike on all of these things? And then we start swerving around and we lose, we're not paying attention. I'm not trying to blame anything on anything, but it's a part of being safe on doing this extreme stuff. This is not normal stuff. So you have to up your game to be safe. So anyway, when you get behind on hydration / electrolytes, the body temperature goes up, right? And what that means is when you get dehydrated, you actually have less blood volume. So your blood pressure goes down, but the heart rate goes up to compensate for that. It's kind of like a flip-flop. With your heart rate going up, if you're fat adapted, you will be able to not burn as much fat. This whole process kind of goes sideways with the heart rate going up, right? Because burning fat, higher heart rate zones, you burn less fat when the heart rate zones get higher. So that means that your need for sugar, glycogen, goes up. And so are you fueling like that? Some people don't. Some people don't have emergency quick sugar on. Fatigue sets in. Your sweating decreases if you're dehydrated. You don't have as much water. The body's going to be like, I don't care that they're doing a half Ironman. I need to protect my brain and my organs. And so the body starts holding onto the water. So your sweat goes down. Your ability to cool itself off goes down. Blood flow goes back to the internal organs. The internal organs, brain, kind of a blood hog. So then your ability to cool yourself goes down. Stuff in your belly due to all of this might come up or out. You start feeling dizzy, or maybe just kind of like a little not focused in the beginning. Cramping can be decrease in water, dehydration, or low in mag. And cramping, really, when you get dehydrated, the ions that we're talking about, all these electrolytes, can't go back and forth, and we get decrease in electrolytes and stuff. Do you see how this all kind of snowballs in on itself? You get cardiac drift. You'll see that your heart rate's just kind of continuing to go up, in a function of probably low mag and the heart rate needing to go up because you're slightly dehydrated or more dehydrated. Your ability to deal with lactic acid goes down. The kidneys are a big player in lactic acid and water regulation. So those two things kind of conflict. So when the lactic acid builds up in the muscles, guess what happens? They stop working. Lactic acid actually interferes with neuron firing for muscle contraction. And so, like, I had an episode of this where I went to keto. I was in keto, so I ran out of sugar, but I was also pushing the pace. So I was up in zone 4 because I was trying to do this crazy race. And so those two events, those two processes interfered with each other, and the body's going to do what it needs to do for survival of the species. And so my knees locked up, and it was a glorious feeling. And then the pacer poked my partner's head with the pacing pole, and I just said, fine, I'm done. Everything goes sideways. Restless legs at night might be dehydration, but it also might be low in mag. Magnesium in general, is the electrolyte that causes the muscle contraction to stop or to relax. Performance goes down. Calf cramping can also be dehydration or mag low. So those are kind of some hints on when you're behind. So, just pay attention when you're exercising, when you're training, but then afterwards too, what the body's telling you. Yep. Oh, check it out.
So we've mentioned, and I use some of these things as well, especially the base salts. But if folks want to try some of the things that we've talked about, the liquid nutrition, the base salts.
Yes.
These are some discount codes, no?
Yes,
they can use.
Yep. Base salts is pretty awesome. Base salts has fueling. That's sucrose and fructose. They're hydro. UCAN is a starch base, cornstarch base, so it doesn't touch the glycemic index at all. That's the only one that really helps with becoming more fat adapted, because you are away from that sugar system. And that I so simplified, almost like said that in a terrible way. I have a podcast on that we'll put in the show notes of becoming more fat adapted. You have to kindly starve the body of sugar, kindly. And UCAN is a good tool for that. But some people don't like it because it's really starchy and it's a different texture. Glucose is an awesome kind of clean version, and it's just a different carb source, kind of why I use it. UCAN is cornstarch carb source, and then if you use different stuff, you can actually up the amount of carbs that you can intake an hour, like from 60 to, 90 maybe. And glucose sugar comes in different forms, right? So you have glycogen and glucose and fructose and sucrose, and just understanding the different versions of the molecule makeup helps. Anyway, there's those.
So I do want to talk just real quick about, a lot of people are familiar with the salt caps that you take. They kind of look like a pill form. Yeah. So base salts are very different because I've used both. Yeah. Base salts are really cool. It kind of feels like you're taking a tequila shot, right, without the tequila during your race. But essentially, it comes in a little canister.
Yes.
And then to carry them with you, you put them in a little tube. It's probably about half the size of this marker. And you flip the top off, do a little lick, get some salt on your thumb. And I mean, Bonnie, my personal method is about 1 lick per mile for the run, a lick every 4 to 5 miles on the bike. Does that sound about right?
Perhaps for you, yes, the base salts is very different. And its wonderful key is, and this is where we are talking about what you use and how readily accessible it is for the body, because things need to be easier. Anything that you can make easier, you're smarter, okay? And then you have the ability to work harder other places, because you do not have an infinite amount of energy, okay? You don't. So the base salts is salt. It's what you need. The body doesn't have to change it. So the idea with the base salts and why it's so critical and why each and every one of my athletes have to have it on them, on the bike at least, and in their fuel belt. I don't care what other way they do it. It's a first aid measure. So because you can put it in your mouth and you can sit it there and it goes directly into your bloodstream via tissue right here, which if you're having GI issues is super smart. Because if you stick more stuff into the belly and the belly is not absorbing, again, go to the Electrolyte 101 podcast. We talk about all of that stuff on why you can't continue to dump stuff in the belly once it's gone sideways. It just doesn't work unless you want to puke or have diarrhea all over the place. So the base salts, you absorb it in your mouth, which is awesome. And the guidelines, and if you were trying to work towards getting close to 1,000 milligrams an hour, it's 3 licks every mile on the run or 3 licks every 5 on the bike. So what I have done is I put it directly on my tongue. I'm not into the thumb licking thing because it's just more and I screw it up and I'll drop it. I just put it directly on my tongue and I figured out what 3 licks a dump is onto my tongue. And you can just experiment with it, but it really depends on how much salt everybody needs based on that day, how much salt they have eaten during the day. And you can tell this, your body will give you clues. But that's the general recommendation if you're working towards 1,000 is 3 licks.
I should make a disclaimer. When I said 1 lick, I have a bigger tube than the usual one. So yeah. Just know what works for you. So.
Yes, absolutely.
For sure.
And I hear this all the time. Oh, this worked for somebody. I'm going to do this. I hear it in the shoe world. I hear it in the stretching world. I hear it in the yoga world. Hey, this piriformis stretch worked for me. Hey, this nutrition worked for me. Hey, this worked for me. Yeah, stop that stuff. Okay? Know the principles and then figure it out your own because you are individual. It might be a guideline, but don't kind of like hang on to what the next person is doing and think that that's going to completely like save the game for you. You got to understand the principles of it. Okay. Base salts. The other thing with, I wanted to throw out there, the pills. I keep salt cap pills with caffeine in my bike in case I want that or I want the caffeine. Caffeine is a good performance enhancer, and caffeine is also a pain reliever. If your belly's going sideways and you need salt, how much salt do you think you're going to get sticking, cramming more salt in your belly? That's why I like the base salts. Do both. Do whatever. Just be smart. Okay. Oop.
So to recap real quick.
I wanted to add, I want to interrupt you. You do such a good job keeping me reined in. But I wanted to toss out some special notes, okay? Special notes for this heat stuff. Please understand that heat illness, heat exhaustion, heat stroke are a real thing. Most of us have probably experienced it many times. If you come home feeling nauseous, that's a bit of heat sickness. So like heat stroke, heat exhaustion, if you have passed out in a race and have been hauled to the med tent and gotten an IV, heat exhaustion, and just like it, and it's a version of a brain injury a little bit, you pass out because the pressure in your head, intracranial pressure, is too high, and your body's like, we're shutting her down. just like concussion, you need to understand that this stuff can reoccur. Okay. So be mindful and treat this with the importance that it needs. This stuff is important stuff. And I've seen coaches train people. I've seen athletes push through, and they think that they have to push through because it's supposed to be hard. You have to be mindful of this stuff. And especially if you're a female, you're busy, you're coming to the game not a spring chicken. A lot of guys, their attitude towards this stuff and their their health status and what are different. So ladies, please, just be mindful that this stuff is serious. I've seen so many like kids out there training, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're gonna hurt themselves because they're not intaking any salt or stuff like that. I've actually been at races, and Coral, I actually put double of my base salts in on every single race now in my race belt because I always end up giving it away. Always.
It's a really good thought.
Yes. Drinking too much water, wash this stuff out. I want to bring this topic up. I'm not an MD. Go Google it. The 101 electrolytes. We'll talk about this more. So the hypernatremic being you don't have enough salt. Okay. It's a real thing. The versions of it, getting headaches and stuff like that. First sign of it, confusion or whatnot. It's just that you don't have enough salt on board, so water goes out of the blood into interstitial space. That would be everything else besides cells and stuff like that, and creates swelling in the head because of the hard noggin, because you have a helmet on already. Okay. And last thing that I want to harp on you guys about, don't take ibuprofen, NSAIDs while you're training, racing, when it's hot, because the NSAIDs, the prostaglandins, are damaging to kidneys if you're slightly dehydrated. And let's face it, if you are training, running, and don't have a Camelback on and you're not getting all the water in, you will be slightly dehydrated, period. So be very mindful of if you need to take pain relief, maybe think about something other than NSAIDs because it is completely damaging to the kidneys. Okay, off my soapbox. Sorry. Sorry.
Good deal. So that's so much awesome information, Bonnie. Thank you. So just a real quick heads up, if you need to go back and review all of this stuff, we are providing show notes at bonniekissinger.com/heat. So both for the notes and then also all of the resources that we cited. Folks, pretty much square one of figuring out what you need to intake is doing a sweat test. Am I right?
Yeah.
So either Google it or talk to somebody who has been there, knows the drill, and knows what to do. Yeah.
You wouldn't be if you were getting ready to do hot training tomorrow, you could go along with anywhere from like 700 to 1,000 milligrams an hour of sodium and up it that way. If you had the salt cap sticks, they tell you about a third of that. If you upped it, you would be fine too. You don't have to do the sweat test. You can go along with a recommendation of 7 to 1,000 and be completely fine. Just make sure you're drinking water too. Anyway.
Yeah, just get a feel for it. Yeah. So, mentioning drinking water, drink. Make sure you're hydrating. Make sure you're also not just drinking water, but that you're also intaking electrolytes, not just in your training, but throughout the day to stay topped up, magnesium supplement, all that good stuff.
Yes.
And then also recognizing that you can and will deplete the sodium, magnesium, potassium, calcium.
Yes.
Any other wrapping thoughts before we talk to folks about one more item?
No, I think that's it. Don't stress out about it. It's important. There's a lot of good resources. Make sure that you're getting resources from folks that maybe aren't so product driven. I'm not getting any money from you guys buying base salts at all. Okay. It's a good product. So just make sure that the information that you're getting, learn how to disseminate if it is product driven or if it's just based in science. That's what the podcast here, the podcast that we do, we're trying to base it in science. I'm not trying to sell you stuff. I want you to be safe and not melt your brain.
Because that's what we're all after.
Okay.
Cool. So if folks want to chat and get more information, they can chat with us, right?
Yes, I do this thing that's freaking awesome. It takes maybe an hour of your time. We do like a free health assessment with our coaching staff. And what we do is you fill out a form. We can zoom out and look at what you have got on your plate race-wise, who you are, your health status, your physical fitness status. And then we chat on the phone. And then we give you recommendations. And it's kind of a community thing that we try to do just to help people with being smarter and safer in all of this stuff. Because while we recognize that being awesome and going doing a half Ironman, and an Ironman is freaking awesome, you just need to be a little bit smarter. And so that's what we're passionate about doing.
And that chat is free, by the way.
Yes. Yep. Awesome. Okay.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for the awesome info, Bonnie. This was fun.
I know. I love it. Okay, cool. Hey, go have a happy Friday.